In my personal opinion, no game holds the mysticism of LSD Dream Emulator. Released on the Sony PlayStation in 1998, it wasn't a success commercially, but in hindsight, the title has become somewhat of a hidden gem, being called one of the most experimental games of all time by numerous critics. I have no idea how to even discuss this game. It immerses you in such an incredibly weird and wonderful world that I can't quite describe to you all without taking a deeper dive on the subject. So, let's dive in. Hi everyone, I'm modemcat, and today we'll be looking at LSD Dream Emulator. But first, a quick history. LSD Dream Emulator was created by Japanese contemporary artist Osamu Sato, who had created the game Eastern Mind's Lost Souls of Tong Now on Windows and Mac in 1994. The game was enough of a critical success that Sony allowed Sato to create on their new game console, the Sony PlayStation. But see, Sato didn't want to make games. He saw game platforms as places where contemporary art could flourish. He began work on a project on the system that would later become LSD Dream Emulator sometime in the mid-1990s. Sato wanted to create an experience that confused and disoriented the player in the way that dreams do. He decided to base the experiences in the game after a dream journal kept by a game designer at Asmik Ace Entertainment, the company that was set to develop the game. The soundtrack was composed by Sato himself, who was a musician in his own right. It was meant to complement the surrealism of the game, using acid techno music with not much melody. Initially, Sato thought of using music with the pentatonic major scale to give the soundtrack an Asian flair, but it ended up being too conforming for the wild and unpredictable nature of the game. Instead, Sato used various samples and chopped up loops to create around 500 musical compositions, all randomly occurring. Take a listen. The game saw a limited release on October 22nd, 1998, exclusively in Japan on the PlayStation 1, alongside a CD, which contained roughly an hour of that acid techno music I mentioned earlier, and a book containing excerpts from the Dream Journal. The game initially was not a success, but over time as we've seen more interest in odd, obscure pieces of media, it's grown in popularity very much. It's also a rare game, selling for crazy prices on eBay and other used markets. So crazy that I had to use a backup of the game on a soft-modded PS1 to capture any of the footage. The gameplay of LSD Dream Emulator is as surreal as it sounds. You walk around the map and touch objects, which transport you to other maps. It's simple at first, but eventually it gets more unpredictable and chaotic. Sometimes you encounter the same map twice. Sometimes you encounter the same map, but one small part of it is completely different. And sometimes it's completely unpredictable what happens. Some days, as they're referred to in the game, are just short FMV sequences. All playable days are about 10 minutes long, I'd say. Each one is different, and various odd phenomena can occur, such as the somewhat infamous Gray Man. Some environments are completely normal, such as the often occurring town, but then others just are completely off the rails, like the vapor-wavy, colorful landscapes that almost feel like being inside a kid's drawing. These different worlds keep the game from being stale and make each playthrough unique and fresh. The textures are all very distorted and seemingly chosen at random, from magazine scans to photographs. Not many times do you encounter another living being, which can sometimes make it feel more like a horror game than anything else. I don't know why, but in some environments it feels very unnerving. Almost like something is watching you. The beings you do encounter are things like horses, sumo wrestlers, or some very strange creatures? Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. The scary feel is also amplified by the fact that the game is based on stuff we all see in dreams with no correlation whatsoever. Anything can happen in this realm of insanity. The main problems with this title are the fact that it's held back by the limitations of the PS1, and although one might argue that adds to the surrealness of the whole package, I'd honestly say it ruins some of that simulation aspect, especially the draw distance, which can get a bit too foggy at times. I'm not sure why this game hasn't gotten an official remaster on modern platforms yet, or better yet, a full sequel with new locations. There's actually a fan-made remaster that's been updated recently called LSD Revamped, but it's only on Windows and not other platforms. Plus, it still uses the original graphics from the game without any updating. To truly get the full experience of LSD Dream Emulator, I'd recommend getting a modded original system and a totally not pirated disc of the game to get the full experience. You can emulate it, but to me it loses a lot of the feel when you aren't playing it on the original system, as well as the fact that there are various emulation issues such as flickering water, though these may have been patched. Or if you're so inclined, you can play that PC version I mentioned, link in description. The odd whimsical but disorienting feel of the game is really the magic of a lot of it. It's pretty hard to imagine a game like this existing today, and that's kind of what I love about it. Don't get me wrong, this game is for sure an odd bird, but it was one of the first experimental console games to ever exist, and I think it deserves any praise it gets. It's truly a work of art in a lot of ways, and it's sad it's not more accessible to the general gaming public. I really hope this video brings more interest to the game, and I know it's a stretch, but if anyone at Sony gets wind of this video, we need this game on the PlayStation Store. Now, the game was issued on the Japanese PlayStation Store, but only on the PS3, and obviously that's not accessible to anyone outside of Japan. We'll see what happens next. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to wrap it up here. If you want to try this game, emulating it will work just fine until we get a more accessible remaster or port. Until that happens, we just have to settle with emulation and modded PS1s. If you're intrigued by this game, I'd honestly just recommend checking out the remake. Although it's not quite as refined as the original game, it runs a lot smoother, it keeps the same aesthetic, and a similar soundtrack, while also being more accessible than the original game. So with that, we've come to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. So I saw this comment a while ago, and I thought it was kind of funny. So, yeah, put that up on the screen. Sonic, we gotta go commit tax fraud!